your patience. We had a training earlier, so we apologize for being over time. But today is May 15th. This is the Historic Preservation Commission, and we'll start with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Keller.
Here.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Here.
Commissioner Dahlia.
Here.
Commissioner Berg.
Here.
Commissioner Beauchamp.
Here.
Chair Haley.
Here. And approval of our agenda for this evening.
Make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And then approval for our meeting minutes from our last meeting, April 17th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any public comments on items that are not on our agenda this evening? Do we have any in the?
No one's online right now.
Okay, thank you. All right, and seeing none, we will move on to our public hearing, which is 929 Parkview Street for a landmark alteration certificate grant and loan, and we'll have a staff presentation.
All right, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Yes, we've got 4 different resolutions, applications here before you tonight. And I did note, I think that this is the first time that a couple of you have seen these types of applications. So if you have any questions at the end, please let me know. I'm happy to go into more detail. The way that we usually do these is we do them as one big group in terms of my presentation and applicant question and comments from the public, and then you all deliberate on each item and make a separate resolution. So if you have any questions about that, Chair Haley will guide us through, or please ask me as well. Okay, so 929 Parkview Street. Here's a general bird's eye view of the area that we're talking about. There are many more pictures in your staff report, but here are just a couple showing the building from the mid-century, and then also the footprint. And here's a view of what it looks like today. Again, you have site visit photos in your staff report. So I'm going to start with the landmark. So there are sort of 3 categories that we look at for the criteria. The first is the age of the property. So landmarks must be at least 50 years old. This one is 71 years old, having been constructed in 1952. Landmarks must meet one or more of the criteria for architectural, social, or geographic environmental significance. So staff finds that the architectural, and I'm sort of giving you just the highlights, of course, right? There's more detail and more reasoning in the staff report, but just to give you sort of the highlights of it, one of the ways in which the landmark meets the architectural criteria is that it displays this minimal ranch style, which is really connected to that mid-century history of development in Louisville. And it exemplifies specific elements of an architectural style or period. Specifically, that's language from our code. It also has a strong social history through the Madonna family, their historic association and current association with the property. So that falls under association with a notable person. You read much more about the Madonna family and their many different impacts on the city. And in terms of the third, landmarks should meet one or more criteria for physical integrity. So in this case, the location and the general form and footprint of the structure are maintained. So it does remain in its original location. As noted and described in the staff report, the siding and ornamentation on this property have changed quite a bit, so just really that exterior pieces. So in terms of retaining its original design features, not as strong as it could be, but you also have an alteration certificate associated with this landmark application that staff believes would meet this criteria of having been accurately reconstructed or restored. So of course it's within your purview to approve it without that alteration, but there will also be an alteration up for consideration. So with that, staff recommends approval of Resolution 1, Series 2023, that would recommend to City Council the approval of 929 Parkview as a historic landmark. Staff recommends that the house be named for the Madonna family and specifically named as the Madonna Homestead, which is the request, the name selected by the family. So on to Resolution 2, the alteration certificate. I'm going to bomb you with a ton of words, but we're not meant to read all of them unless you'd like to go back and question. But I just wanted to note that the underlined purple language, that all relates to somehow preserving what's there or restoring what is historic. And all of the bolded or the red language, that all relates to some way or another accommodating new additions or new work to be done on the property. So there is a lot of different language that is, guiding you all in your decision related to both those two big pieces. So staff broke this down into 3 general requests. The request related to restoring the property, requests related to changes proposed in the rear, and then changes to the carport addition. So I'm just going to quickly go through those 3 different sections. So first of all, related to restoration work, this would include restoration of the siding, restoration of the window size and design, and then restoration of that Art Deco front porch that you can see in the photos. So this is all based off of historic photos and also applicant knowledge of the property. The applicant was involved in some of the building. This is his family homestead. And so through discussions between applicant and staff, we really pinpointed, I think, to our satisfaction, that all of these pieces were either related to historical photographs or knowledge of the property. In terms of changes to the carport additions, the carport was added sometime in the 1980s, and they're proposing to change and update the windows and the siding. And in their alteration for the carport specifically, they've deliberately designed it in a way that marks it as different and not marking it as trying to look like it was from the 1950s and match the rest of the house. As we know, there's sort of 2 things to be considering in a situation like this one. One is whether that carport has historic merit on its own, if that's something that you're interested in preserving as is. Staff does not recommend that. It was built in the 1980s. It's a carport. It doesn't have a ton of, as important as they were, doesn't have that architectural or social significance. And in this case, the alterations do differentiate it significantly or sufficiently. Then in terms of the changes to the rear, so the applicant has proposed an addition, basically a bump out on the rear elevation. And we analyzed this in a couple different ways. First of all, showing that the new addition, all of the parts that would be on this addition are differentiated. So you can see from that's the east view up there on the top right, you'd be able to see a little bit of the bump out in the back, and you can sort of clearly see the way that the windows are distinct and the siding changes. And then also you can see that it does extend the back of the roof line and changes that, but otherwise staff finds it's pretty minimal change, especially for an addition. We've seen a lot of different and larger additions in the past, and this one's pretty minimal. And then you can also see when you look at the full rear view that it is differentiated again from the other elevations, the more historic elevations. So I also just want to note clearly that this would all be siding and window work that's been changed in the past. So they're not taking away historic elements, and it's also on the rear. So another couple of different considerations. So staff recommends approval of Resolution 2, Series 2023, approving the requested alteration certificate. Resolution 3 is for the grant request. The applicant is requesting approval of a preservation and restoration grant. That total request is $51,974. All of that would be matching. And then just so you know as well, again, because this is the first time some of you have seen these, there is a reimbursement request timeline. So once the property is landmarked, they have up to 5 years to put in their reimbursement. So if you approve it, if it gets approved this summer, then that's sort of when their time would tick. So just so you have a sense of when this money would need to be reimbursed and what timeline this is affecting. So staff finds that the grant request meets all criteria. I won't go through this in detail, but we did look at it. Are these all contemplated in the historic structure assessment? They are. The only exception is the egress basement windows, which do relate to being able to make the basement usable per code today. And so we went through all of that. And then as you'll notice, so we have a $40,000 cap on our preservation and grants, but we do have language that allows for exceeding those maximum amounts for a showing of extraordinary circumstances. So that's up there on the bottom left of the screen. The text reads, upon a showing of extraordinary circumstances relating to building size, condition, architectural details, or other unique condition. So we've started, as of late last year, to make tables that really call out which piece of this is related to the extraordinary circumstances. So we've done the same thing here in our analysis. The piers to support the crawl space and the LVL structural beams all relate to the condition of the foundation, which necessitates support or needs support, and that is documented in the HSA. And then the egress basement windows are a required code update in order to be able to use this historic home in the basement for its full square footage. So that's something that our building code does require for them to be able to use the property. So staff recommends approval of this resolution number 3, series 2023, that would recommend approval to the City Council of a grant request in the amount of $51,974. Then the final resolution before you tonight is Resolution 4, which pertains to the loan. The applicant is requesting approval of this loan for the same amount, $51,974. This interest rate, I have to check in with the people who administer the grants. They came up with a slightly different rate, so that's something I'll be checking on. But it will be somewhere between what you see here, 5.75, and I think they quoted it at 6.25, so somewhere in that range for the interest rate. Staff finds that the grant request meets all criteria. I'm not going to go back through what I just did with the grant, but that's step 1, is making sure that it relates to preservation, restoration, or rehabilitation. But there are other criteria, so current amounts of funds in the Historic Preservation Fund and the needs of other projects. So just for you all to know, we have somewhere over $2 million total in unencumbered funds, so probably around $2.5 million would be our estimate currently. The loan program has one outstanding loan and then one that's been completed. It started in 2014, and this is only the 3rd application that we've had, just to give you a sense of the rate of adoption of these. You can see the portfolio balance up on the screen for our current outstanding loan. And then the necessity of the work, this request basically covers what would be the matching portion that the applicant would be responsible for, so it does relate directly to all of the pieces that we've talked about already. And then the final piece is the availability of other funding sources. And I just wanted to note that, all of the loan qualification and analysis that goes on for the applicant, that all comes from, we outsource that. So it's not required ahead of the HPC, but we happen to get it in time. So this morning we did get approval of the loan from our external administrators. So that's just more information for you all. And then, so finally, staff recommends approval of this resolution, number 4, series 2023, recommending approval of a loan request in the amount of $51,974. So staff recommends approval of all 4 resolutions. I'm happy to leave this up on the screen so you know which ones you're referring to. And I'm happy to take any questions, and then the applicant and his family are also here if you have questions for them or if they have a presentation.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for staff?
Yeah, so just the loan program, and I realize it's 50%, that's how the math works. But is there a max that this loan could be requested for, or a minimum amount, or was it just, is this customary to get the matching grant from the applicant?
I don't know if it's customary. I'm not sure what the other 2 have done, but there is no maximum on the loan. I think there might be a minimum. I'm a little fuzzy on that. It might be around, if it is, it's around like $2,000. It's pretty low. But there is no maximum on the loan. And I know that in other cases, the one that I'm more familiar with that happened, the first one that we had, was largely due to extraordinary circumstances. The amounts were just so high. So I don't know if it was literally the matching, or it might have even been above that. I'm not sure.
Any other questions? All right. And would the applicant like to speak tonight? And if so, if you'll just state your name and the city you live in.
Hi, Gordon Madonna, one of the natives of Louisville, the Madonna family. And I would just like to introduce the Madonnas that are left in Louisville. My wife, Gail, my daughter Christine, who's living in the current residence, along with her husband Derek, and my son Mark, who's living on the other portion of the garage, whatever you want to call it, apartment that we're building. So I just want to thank the commission, Amelia especially, and Rob, the planning department, for all their help and assistance in this matter, and the time that you're taking to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right, and then any public comment? I don't think we'll have any other public, maybe online. Is there anyone online?
Nobody's online.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll bring it back for commission deliberation. And I think we'll just go one by one. So we'll start with the landmark, discuss, make a motion, decide, and then just work our way down. Is that good with everyone?
Sure.
So I think as far as landmarking, obviously this home is 50 years or older. I think it's exciting to have mid-century properties come before us that are landmarked, just kind of setting the stage for more to come in the future. So I think that's really exciting. So definitely meets our age criteria. The social history is strong with the Madonna family, and the architectural integrity is also very strong, even though it's had some minor changes, the siding and ornamentation, but those are minimal, and so I think they don't take away from the integrity. So as far as the qualifications, I think it is very strong.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, as staff mentioned, footprint location has remained intact. Obviously, the siding has changed. That front porch, that Art Deco porch is pretty unique. I don't know that I've ever seen that. So exciting to see that it's wanting to remain and get put back.
I agree, based on the staff report and everything that came before us in the packet ahead, I thought it met all of the criteria for landmark, and I'm very supportive of that.
I love the name too, Madonna Homestead. I think just kind of encompasses like the whole family instead of just a simple tribute. So I think that's really neat. Keith, did you want to say anything?
No, I agree with everything you guys said. I totally am in support of this.
Thank you.
So I would like to make a motion to landmark 929 Parkview Street.
And I'll second that.
We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlia,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, and then moving on to the alteration certificate. And this would include, I'm trying to remember all the pieces now.
So I think there's the restoration, which would be the siding, the windows to bring them back to that mid-century look, the front porch to be Art Deco, and those were based on the different photos that we saw in the family record. Then there's the carport to differentiate that look, and then the rear addition, which would also be differentiated.
And I think the proposed addition is fairly insignificant to the entire project, and being on the rear, I don't think that it would affect the look and feel of the original structure, so I would not be opposed to that.
I also was delighted to see that you were going to bring the structure back to what it, as close as you could bring it back to its original look. I do think it's a pretty unique building and structure, and I was delighted to see that come across.
I wish we had a way to actually advocate for what's being done here, to go back to the more original architecture, that look of something. I don't think we do, but it's clear that that's what we prefer. maybe there'll be a time or guidelines, or not guidelines, but just directions that staff and the commission could point people in. Or maybe the library would have or the museum would have a list of the types of sightings and materials that were used at different times. That could probably be a benefit at some point.
I think with these different parts of this alteration certificate, you'll do a nice job of making the home more, modern, livable with the addition, the carport, but as we've said, really bring it back to that look that it had originally, with those windows that you, and all those original photos, and the entrance and the siding. And with preservation, we always consider the differentiation, right? So people can see the, the original home and then see what's been added and, see the differences. And this certificate will do a good job of that.
One thing I forgot to talk about in the landmarking, because I wrote it in the wrong section, but as far as the carport, should we exclude that from the landmark at all, or is it, how do we?
There's no need. I mean, the whole
it's-
property is landmarked, so you don't need to exclude it, but I think you can reasonably say, like, it's okay to change it, if you
Okay.
don't find it to be historic.
Right, because that was the only thing I was gonna say, is that because it's 1980s, obviously it would have to come before, for an alteration certificate if they decide to do anything. But I didn't know if we wanted to make it easier where, like, in the future it can just be excluded, or we just keep it and just deal with it.
I think functionally it's actually easier
Okay.
just to say the whole property is landmarked.
that's
That's how our
great.
agreements
That's
work,
great.
and it
Yeah,
makes it
that's
super
awesome.
clear.
Just want to clarify that. Yeah, I agree that all the alterations proposed are very sensitive, and definitely go along with our national standards of how to deal with a historic property, so yeah, I'd be in favor of this. Did you have anything, Keith? We're just gonna make sure that you're always included, so,
Well, I appreciate that. No, I agree with everything. Let's start the vote.
all right. Do you want to make a motion for resolution 2023?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's fine. I'll second it.
All right.
We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlia,
Yes.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, and the next is for the grant, and this is a matching grant. And it includes the full grant plus the extraordinary circumstances grant. So that's structural, and the other piece was,
I think it was structural. There was, right, the foundation,
and the window wells, the egress.
window wells, and there was one more. What was the?
I thought it was just the two.
The LVL beams.
Beams and
beams.
the egress.
Right. It was nice to see that an HSA was also attached to this property, and those funds were used. The HSA was done. Discovered these areas needed to be addressed. So, that's, I imagine where that $5,000 comes in to do that important work.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like that's roughly 12,000 above the grant. I feel like that's reasonable for supporting the HSA and making the property viable and up to code and everything, so.
Again, I'm very supportive of the grant as well. I would ask the Madonna family that you become our best advocate in terms of telling the population of Louisville what you're doing here and how the HPC helped with the grant, because I do think more projects like this that we get on the board is exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, this is a great example.
I appreciate that, even though this is extraordinary circumstances, that's sort of a subjective judgment, but the amounts of this are certainly within the realm of what our normal maximum grant would be.
Yeah, it's very reasonable. Keith, would you like to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm excited for the Madonna family. And also that, just on a side note, that the grant amounts are very similar to what we encountered with the LaSalle house. So I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary.
All right, maybe you'd like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve Resolution 3, Series 2023.
I'll second that.
We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlia,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, and then finally is the loan amount. So this loan would be for the exact matching amount of the 51,974. So I think it's great. I was around when we developed the loan program, and I think it's a really good way to promote preservation and kind of financially help people do these projects, because we do have a limited amount of money that we can give. And so this was just one extra way that we can support them. And I think if I'm correct, the interest rate is like 1 below 2 below prime. Yeah, so again,
Correct.
yeah, it's a good, especially right now, that helps a lot. So I'm excited, always excited when someone chooses to use our loan program. So, yeah.
I think I missed this, and I apologize if I did. What's the length of the loan?
See the length of the loan?
Yeah, so what are the terms other than the interest
It's
rate?
definitely in the staff report. I think it's 20 years.
20 years? Okay.
Director Zucchero is nodding, yes.
It's hard from where we sit to see if the loans that we offer through the program are worthwhile compared to what might be available publicly. And so it's good to know that they are competitive and something that somebody would want to use. Not that difficult maybe to make it happen.
Hopefully.
Yeah, so I do have a question for the applicant, which please don't feel compelled to answer, but we are trying to get some feedback on our program generally. And I would be curious as to, did the loan help you go forward with the project? Or, I mean, how important was it in your decision to proceed?
The loan definitely helps. It's 2% under the going rate now. I think it's something like 8.2% now, so definitely it helps. So we wouldn't be able to do it without it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That's what we were hoping for. All right. Anyone like to make a motion on this one?
I would move that we approve Resolution 4 for a grant for 929 Parkview.
Second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlia,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. So yeah, congratulations. We're really excited. It's very exciting for us to have all of these come before one. It's like a final package where we can say, go and do the work. So this is really exciting. So staff will be in touch with you as far as next steps, and you'll get a plaque, and we'll have you at our next plaque ceremony next May. So tell all your family and neighbors, and it'll be really exciting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you're good to go. Thank you so much. Oh. Sometimes you do the chair last. Sure. Just mix up everyone else. Yeah. I was like, oh no, is that my name? I think we all panicked, like, No, it's good. Third, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, that was good. Bright spot in the year. So our next item is our training discussion, and this, we don't have to belabor this by any means, but did everyone turn in their exit ticket?
I-
With, go ahead.
How do you turn it in?
Oh, I don't know. You just push submit?
Well, I submitted it.
Yeah,
And I
that's how
got,
you do.
I didn't know if I was supposed to put Amelia's email down and
It goes
went-
automatically to her,
Oh, okay.
right? Or to us, or? Yeah.
So did everyone take it?
I
Maybe it
didn't-
goes to me, maybe. I don't get a notification that people did
I didn't get a notification either, but I think you made the exit form.
Oh,
But I'm
okay.
happy, while you're starting to
Yeah.
come, I'm happy to pull some stuff if you want me to.
That's a good point. Let me see if I can find it. So, did anyone have anything that was interesting? We'll just start with that. Just anything that was new or you didn't know.
I mean, I found it interesting. I found it informative. Personally, I don't know. I didn't feel like I needed to do the exit ticket, for the compliance board of it. But I don't know if we do have a compliance training requirement as a commissioner. So I didn't know if that was part of the deal.
It was more just,
It was, to stimulate some discussion. But yeah, I mean, my bottom line comment is I'm kind of looking forward to the next installment. I don't know that I'd want to do it every 2 weeks, but
you found it
certainly,
beneficial.
yeah, certainly once so far since we've been here. I mean, we could even double that and it wouldn't be terrible.
Okay,
So,
that's
yeah,
good
so I
feedback.
found it useful.
Good. So it wasn't horribly boring or, okay, that's good.
I still am maybe not quite sure when the statewide tax advantages apply. Maybe, is it only on commercial businesses that property, the tax or the credit that you get from preserving, does that only apply to a money-making business?
So for yeah.
Federal for commercial.
Yep.
State level for commercial.
Right.
I learned that
Yeah,
today.
right,
Okay.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
exactly.
Correct. For residential, or for the state, it could be residential. You have to be commercial to get the federal tax break.
Well, how does what's the nature of the tax credit against, because property tax is countywide?
No, it's just for state taxes, for wages. If you have a state tax obligation, you can write it off with this credit.
But if you're a resident and you don't have a state obligation,
Well, you do if you earn income,
or if you're an income, so it's only income producing property.
just on income, yes.
Okay. So in a lot of cases, it wouldn't really be applicable.
No, it's true. Maybe if you're a business owner or something like
Okay,
that,
thanks.
sure.
But if you had a residence you did and got a state tax credit for, wouldn't that be a state tax credit against your state income tax?
Yes, and
Yeah.
also, yeah, and if you had a
so-
rental, if
Yeah,
you had a
so,
rental, you could use it on that too.
yeah, if it'd go through your
Right.
business, it'd be part of a
Sure.
business credit in the state, otherwise it'd be part of a personal tax
Absolutely.
credit. Yeah.
Yep. Can't get into the internet for some reason. Let me see. So one of the questions on the exit was specifically as far as the 10 standards. I thought that was really helpful. And I think tonight, like, we kind of went through a lot of our standards as far as like reversible additions, design sensitive additions, retain historic defining features. But I think even as we are only like 5 months into the year, like, some of these have definitely come up for us in some of our other projects. So just kind of like, what do you think is the most challenging for Louisville, and kind of strategically, like, is there anything that we need to think about, or, that kind of thing? So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would agree. I think several of these have come up already this year. I mean, tonight, obviously, but in several of the meetings we've been at, and I think some of the ones that are more challenging for Louisville are the designing of sensitive additions, and then maybe reversible additions as well, or not so easily reversed. That seems to be kind of something the past couple of years, where we kind of have the biggest kind of push-pull with applicants is whether they're sensitive additions. And then also like tonight, so the differentiation, kind of making sure that the additions or modifications can be differentiated from the original structure.
Yeah, I sort of reacted to in a similar way to those questions. I thought the challenges for our town on the reversibility of additions, anyone doing a residential addition, for the most part, it's not going to be reversible.
Right.
So it's
Right.
going to be almost a really challenging thing. And I thought the two I flagged were the retaining historic changes of significance and retaining character-defining features. Due to some of the age and some of the changes of many of our structures over time, is a 1930s or a 1950s set of features the most appropriate set of features? And I found that to be something that I don't know that I'd always want to default to the original, which is what a preservationist would probably argue for, but if the 1950s or 40s version is a better piece of architecture, I would default there. So I think that gets to be challenging.
Right, and that's one of the things that they brought up specifically, is that those additions do become historically significant at some point. Yeah, 150 years. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so then it is always that delicate bound kind of dance around, how do we, do we take it back? Do we leave it? So.
At least this gives us a basis to bring that up in our discussions, rather than it just being, we like something better.
Right.
Which also goes back to the training we did tonight, that it's, really not about our preference or liking or not liking. It's about meeting the criteria that's, well established and articulated, and, making decisions that are based on those criteria.
Yeah. One thing that they pointed out that I think is always important to remember in our town is that nationally historic places are not protected locally. So I think that's because we have some that have not been landmarked but are on the historic register. And so that's kind of one of those, possibly, we need to advocate for some of those to recognize that their home isn't protected just because it's under it's nationally on the national register, but that they might want to consider locally landmarking it. So I think that's important. Let's see. I can't get my computer to connect to the internet, so I can't find the form.
Okay, so
Do you find it?
I've
Okay.
got it open.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So you were just talking about, I think you've covered most everything. The other questions were interest in the national conference in the fall, and then if there was anything, I can look at answers to, is there anything from this training you'd like further information on?
Yeah, was there any,
Let me investigate, okay.
and I guess we can ask that to the commission too, of just, was there anything from here that you're like, oh, we need to know more about that, or we need, whether it's more training or more something in our program that doesn't line up, or
I didn't see anything, no.
Well, I asked earlier about those tax credits. Is that something that staff discusses with the applicant of, person who's landmarking, or is that kind of on them?
I do not talk about it because I have not
Yeah.
learned about it.
Yeah, I don't think, just from my experience, it hasn't been discussed, and I don't know if it is as important as the grants we give anyway, but it might be for people. Keith is obviously aware of it.
Yeah, Keith might be able to speak more to it.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you, Gary. It's probably not as important. However, I mean, if the state's going to offer it, why not take advantage of it? So the only thing I would recommend is before and after photos are extremely helpful in the application.
Okay.
Did you have help from the state, like History Colorado, or who, like, did anyone
Yeah.
from the state help you? Because I think they've always come
History
across as
Colorado
very-
did, yeah.
Yeah, I think they've always come across as being very approachable and like helpful.
They're very
with that.
approachable, yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah was really good,
Mhm.
and Lindsay, and they're all good.
Right, so I think that's kind of where that kind of
Yeah,
falls.
they were very helpful.
And I will say, at the last meeting, Commissioner Keller said that he would be potentially
Oh, right.
available for questions. So that might be a quick way to get it started without waiting
Yeah.
for me to actually learn the ins and outs of it. But
Right.
if somebody say, hey, if you're interested in this, we have a commissioner that you can talk to.
Right,
Yeah, you're welcome to share my phone number or email.
yeah.
Thanks, Keith.
But I
appreciate
think
that.
that's my point is, like, we have state people that are experts at it, and so it keeps Amelia more free for us. And so, yeah, that's something she can pass on up.
I guess our documentation does point out that there are other levels of credits available, like the state one. I think that maybe the handouts or some of the brochures, but I didn't know to what extent you acted on them.
Yeah. And I think, like, just in the very beginning, they talk about why we preserve, and I think just remembering those and all of our hearings and advocacy and trainings and all that are just important for us to remember. It's our identity and pride. It reduces waste, revitalizes downtown, promotes heritage tourism, generates jobs, increases property values, and supports small businesses. So I think those are always, or if someone, just having those in our minds, at least a few of them, to when we are talking to people that are not excited about preservation, just kind of bringing those up as, depending on where they fall is in their argument, is just important for us as advocates for the program. So, yeah. Anything else?
No?
Two of the links, one of them was the economics of preservation. I think it's like every $1 million drives 1.3 million or something. And I don't know if I have that exactly right, but there might be a couple of sound bites in our social program to drop those into some of our posts.
No, that's a great idea.
Because I thought the links in the different publications they linked to were pretty interesting. I mean, I skimmed them, I didn't read them at all,
Right.
but they were useful and right on point with your point, Linda.
That's awesome. I'm glad you found those helpful. Did anyone look up any interesting buildings on that one?
No.
I had a hard time navigating it. Yeah, it wasn't very user friendly. I know. No,
We can get through it.
so it wasn't just me. Okay, so that's kind of sad. But, yeah. Anyway, that's good. All right. Yeah, I think that was kind of it. I just wanted us to just have a chance to, yeah, if there's anything blatant or helpful or confusing or whatever, we just have a chance. But Keith and I will find the next installment, and we can do that at least a few more times, probably before the end of the year, 2 or 3 more times, depending. So, yeah. Is there anything specific that you're interested in, or do you want us just to kind of find? I think we had an actual list of some ideas. I think we went over those one of the times we were in here. So, anyone have anything specific, or let's just find the next one that makes sense? Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, so that was all on that. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, Keith?
Nope, you said it all.
All right. Do you want to do the exit form next time or no? Would you prefer not to? One of the reasons, I mean, there was some information that I was like, this is helpful, like to pass on, like the links or whatever, but we don't have, if y'all think it's silly or annoying, we don't have to do that.
I thought the links were useful.
Okay, yeah.
I don't do well with compliance.
I see, you're a rebel, that's fine.
If it's not a compliance.
It's not a reply, no.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's just more, yeah, it's not, well, and some of it was feedback, like what are some challenges, what are, and I'll actually go through them and kind of synthesize them so we can all kind of see what we said. So that would have been helpful this time, but I'll do that.
A lot of professional
Right,
communities require ongoing education.
right. No, it's not a requirement. No, it's just more of a, just annoyance, yeah, just silly.
As an architect, you do have ongoing training requirements. Maybe that could meet some of yours.
I know.
That's right.
All right, so on to the coloring book discussion. So we'll turn that over to that subcommittee or staff. Are you gonna do that?
Yes, I've got some slides on this one. I do want to note that we do have a training requirement. We've already met it through attending the Saving Places conference, but we're required to do training throughout the year. It's one event, but I think we're really killing it. So that was one of the things that we had feedback on our audit last year was, y'all are not doing the training. So now we are. But genuinely, thank you. That was great. Okay, so I am not hooked up. Coloring book. I just want to start the conversation, and then I'm happy if people want to email me comments or what, but I'd love at least a little bit of feedback from that I know the subcommittee, which is Chrissy and Gary, and I need to move forward. So first of all, just to let you know, the layout for the coloring book is, there's like lots of pieces to it, but just for today's discussion, we'll have the summary of the building on one side and the image and the building title on the other. That might change. In fact, I actually think I have this wrong. I apologize. This would be on the back of each sheet. So sorry, that's on me. We were debating between the two. I think right now we're having it so that you could have a perforated sheet, pull out, and be able to see the drawing on one side and then the relevant information on the other. If we did it this way, it'd probably be too many pages. But of course, I can't even keep it straight, so I apologize. But the idea is there'll be a summary and then an image that they're associated together. So one of the things that I do want to try to get feedback on, in addition to the text, if anybody has any comments on that, are the format. So when you saw this in your packet, that was all 15 building summaries. It was more or less our second or so draft of going through. And I just wanted to point out some things and to get some feedback from you all, whether you think this works, whether you think it doesn't, what other suggestions you have. So one is, I think we'll do something at the top that has the name of the landmark, the address, and then around when it was built, just so we don't have to repeat all that information in the text. And then we tried to hit, the history, of course, mention the architecture when it was interesting or notable. And then each one should have a today section at the end, just pulling it to either something relevant about the program or just something interesting, what's the use been today. And we weren't really aiming for a certain length, but we ended up being between 150 and 200 words per building. So general feedback on that format, whether you think it works, whether you think that they're too long or too short, is there another section that we're missing, critical information? Just love some input on that first.
I don't think it's too wordy. I feel like it hits everything. Got everything covered.
I think when we put together enough of the coloring book that we know how the format all ties together, the cover and the table of contents and the drawings and their descriptions, we probably won't really know if there are issues or things that should be moved around until we have a draft of that. That'd be my guess.
I think the text, like the just general format is appealing, like it's very, it's not overwhelming, it makes sense, I like the history, and then the today, I think that's really important just to understand like what the purpose of the building is today. I don't think it's too wordy, so I think it's great.
My only two comments would be, and I assume there will be a map that keys to all of the buildings in the book somewhere, front or back or somewhere, because it would be a bit of a walking tour of the town. And I would just think about who the audience is, because if it's coloring book, I think kids, and if it really is for coloring, do you want to think about some kid-friendly kind of statements about the buildings, bigger format, bigger font, you know, a little simpler for them, and then educate what might be their parents with these? Because I do like the write-ups, but I think it's important to think about who's going to be using the book.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we've talked about it being for any age, which is pretty difficult.
Where will they be available? Where can you pick them up?
Yeah, so we'll have them, I think, basic level would be library, museum, and here. And then we definitely have not started talking about how to use them in any real sense. I think once we feel like we're a little bit on more solid ground, having more actual designs and drawings under our belt, I think we'll move forward with that. But I think the original vision, if I'm right, was that this would be a tool that we could use in multiple different places. So if we have an event, have some coloring books there, even taking some of them out and giving them, you know, as take and makes that the library and museum does as individual drawings, doing, you know, I know that the open space has plein air activities. That could be an opportunity, you know, if there's a landmark near an open space for them to use the coloring book. So lots of different pie in the sky ideas, but I think very basically just available at city buildings.
I think it was conceptualized as well for multiple different ages to use and enjoy, whether it's elementary age kids to middle school, high schoolers. You know, adult coloring has, you know, kind of had a comeback in the past few years. And certainly young children would not be reading this, but you know, I think all those other groups would be and could be. But even young children could color. You know, everybody colors differently, I suppose. So that's where we're looking at the drawings in particular to still kind of determine what we want, you know, how we want to approach the drawings so that they're accessible to different groups at the same time.
So is there a map incorporated?
I don't think we had talked about that, but that's a great idea. There should
Yeah,
be.
I think it's a great idea.
It's a great idea, yeah.
Yeah. What we're currently working on is the general write-up, the introductory write-up, and the drawings, in addition to these, and then the layout. So, but a map's a great idea, absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, the introduction, I think I wrote this in the memo, but I think right now we're conceiving of it as having a brief overview of Louisville, just so people can know kind of what we're referencing. We don't have to repeat it every time in here. Talking about our program, and then, you know, some type of statement that situates this effort in the larger historical context, by which I mean making it very clear that when we talk about residents of Louisville, we're talking about residents after the town was founded. So, you know, not trying to say that this is the whole history of the built environment of this location, of this land. So covering those, you know, three pieces. And then the other big thing, you know, that I've proposed to draft is like a one-page graphic that kind of gives people a really basic understanding of different architectural terms. And that's something that I'd love to bring to, you know, the architects on the commission and see, you know, and that would be, I'm imagining, for kids. I mean, I say I'm learning words all the time in this job, and Jason and I will be driving down, and I'll be like, "That's a such and such," and he's like, "No idea what you're talking about." I'm like, "I learned that a month ago." So adults too, right? But I think having something for kids where they can look at a house and start to be able to read it, I think that's a really cool skill set. So we'll have something there, and then the map's a great idea. I've made a note. And Randy, I also think maybe we could do a little. If we have these write-ups, there's like a drop-down section that's like fun fact, and it's in a little bit more kids text or something that we can say one historic piece that we would love for a kid to take away.
You, you,
That's a good idea.
you gave us a presentation, I think, last meeting about design standards in town, and there were some little drawings about the cottages in Louisville. That might be the, sort of a fun fact. I thought that was an interesting little quick view of styles in Louisville, and there might be a couple others like that in that presentation.
Yeah, we went sort of back and forth with these write-ups, whether or not to include, the specific architectural style, which has sometimes, then kind of vocabulary that went with it, architectural vocabulary, kind of moved away from that, right, to not bog these down and keep them more with the social history and with how they're being used today, which are recognizable, and right, to then have a separate section, kind of as people were interested and want to, be able to drive around and see these different styles, it's all there for them.
Right. And even the bingo card, like there's really neat stuff there, like bungalow, and so they have like little pictures of everything with the actual like architectural name, and so so I mean it can be really simple but really helpful. Tapered columns, clipped gable, so just be like simple enough for a kid to kind of identify things, but helpful for adults too, where it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. And it also gives them more appreciation for our very simple architecture. So to actually name it and know that that's like recognizable
Right.
is important. Yeah.
Yeah, and when the particular properties were chosen, the residential ones, we did make an effort to try to have a variety of styles. I think some people maybe kind of beginning to think of historical preservation, kind of go to that like Queen Anne or Victorian look, which there are certainly those in Louisville, and they're lovely, but there's a lot of different architectural styles here, and very simple ones, but very important to our history. So the coloring book includes a lot of different styles. So good to get the vocabulary in there.
So Millie, you were saying maybe have these, but then have an overarching, like, this is what, like, kind of the takeaway for a kid. Is that what you were saying? It's not like saying that, but just kind of having a pull out or most important.
Something like that. I mean, brainstorming off the top of my head, but I thought, we'll have the full 8.5 to 11 page. And so there is a way that we could do, the first half or so to be this, just that block, and then the bottom half to be a little more stylized for a kid and not necessarily be like the takeaway, but just like, spaghetti was made in this basement or something like that, a little bit. Yeah.
Kind of like little nuggets, kind of interesting facts or.
More aimed for like an elementary audience, I guess.
So I was going to say, like, I mean, this is really, I think mid-elementary and up could read this and understand plenty. So I think that's a good idea of just kind of little fun facts, maybe at the bottom, where younger kids could read it, and then they could have a grown-up or older person summarize the rest.
Teach them about the dust bug or whatever that, what was it?
Because I don't think this is like above and beyond what a kid should be able to read and kind of get a basic.
Elementary.
Yeah.
Understand.
I think so.
Most of this.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
I think so.
Anything else about the text that anybody prepared ahead of time that you really wanted to say or let us know? Keith, anything?
Still there? Okay.
Oh. Okay, well, thank you, actually. That great idea is super helpful. I think, thank you so much. Okay, so,
And thanks again to Gary for getting us started on this by, pulling these out from the write-ups you've done previously. It was a really helpful starting point.
For sure. All right, so the next is our work plan and subcommittee updates.
yes, okay.
Coloring book, check.
Yep.
Coloring book, check, yes. So we'll do, I guess I'll go here and read off from, because I don't have it here. And we'll go through the work plan. Yes, okay. It's going to take me a minute to get on my computer. So the thing I wanted to start by saying is, I'd like to get in touch with each subcommittee, before really going out for this. But I think it would be really helpful to me personally if we could reevaluate our timelines on a couple of our subcommittees and be really particular about what we need done for the next 2 months. I think just with the spring workload and we're having some staffing changes, I think it would be really helpful for me to have a couple of really specific things that I can help you all move toward, and then maybe we table a few for a future quarter. So I don't want to put you on the spot now to having to do that, but I will get in touch with you all and say, okay, is there option for you to kind of be a little slower on some of these pieces? I think would be really helpful to me personally. And then the other thing that I'm sort of trying to focus on, I think it's come more and more to my attention that I really have some hopefully straightforward, but some administrative ways of kind of making the program a little bit easier to understand and administer without any big overriding changes. I'd really like to focus on those for the next month. I think it would help with my workload and also just our ability to communicate what we want to applicants. I've learned a lot in the last 6 or 8 months, and so I'd like to think it's time to update some of our FAQs and things. So I'll probably be personally focusing on that for the next month or so as well. So I just wanted you all to know, because it does affect the work plan. But with that said, let's start with social media. It's actually a fun one this month.
I know. So Amelia has been amazing at getting them all posted. So we have 3 posts out. 1, 2, 3 out. Has anyone seen them?
Where are they?
On Instagram. Yeah.
You have to sign up for that, don't you?
You do. It's okay. It's good that you don't.
I think I saw it and followed it.
Nice. Good job. Yeah.
So you have one.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so if you happen to see it, make sure you're following the city's Instagram page and then like any of them that you see. And we're competing with some cows, but I think it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, so it's good. I don't, yeah, we have 2, well, yeah, so we have 2 more. Will have the invitation for the landmarking ceremony, and then we'll have the picture that we just took outside as kind of celebrate, because the Saving Places, or the Preservation Month is people saving places. So it's highlighting the people who are actually doing the work. So we are doing some of the work. So anyway, so we'll do that for one of them, and then the preservation. So anyway, so that's that. So it's going well, and we'll continue it into the rest of the year.
And something just, we can maybe start with Marty and Linda, but part of the reason why we did the individual photos was because one of the over the month ideas that the subcommittee had was to do little bios of each one of you. So prepare to have a couple of statements about yourself. I assume that Linda or Marty might be reaching out with you, but we can just start thinking about that so we can deploy them at will.
Phone number and address.
Yeah. Yeah, your personal line.
Yeah.
Okay. And then HPC training. Anything you want to add about that one?
I don't think so.
Okay. I think I might have missed it. Did you come up with a cadence or where you want to do when you might want to do one next?
We didn't do a cadence, but maybe in 2 months. That would be May, June, July. We'll have one. We'll assign one next month and have it due in July. Is that good? Sure, we can do that.
Great. Okay, so user experience surveys. I'll just start off by they have stalled. This is partly why I would like some specific guidance. So I think what we're going to do next is focus on getting Randy and Chrissy, I'll give it to you both, the list of contacts. Because we've done the survey questions, we're ready to get started, it sounds like, on doing those first ones with Gary and Keith, and then the next group. So I will get that to you. I will foreground that work. And I do think that getting the budget numbers, I now have a video that tells me how to do all of the stuff on our Munis system, because I was going to our finance department, they were telling me, and then I was not doing it for a week, and I'd completely forgotten the tiny little buttons I was supposed to hit. So I have a video, like a personal little webinar for myself, which is great. But I think realistically, it's just not going to happen for at least the next month. So I will focus on the surveys and then definitely revisit. I know that's a critical part of what you all are trying to do and what we're trying to do as a group. So I know that there's a hang up on my end. Any other things? All right, report on barriers is for a later time. And then the last one is the blue parrot sign. Josh isn't here, so I'll just update everybody. He got a call back from a conservator that he'd been trying to contact. And I think our next step is to talk to facilities and see, is it possible to get somebody in for a brief look? What does that really entail, since it's boxed up pretty well? So that'll be our next step. And then I think, depending on how that goes, we'll be looking at potentially bringing it in for a full assessment. I don't think we'll be doing that in the next several months. It'd probably be more like the fall that would come at the earliest, come before you all. But we're just kind of making slow steps on doing something with the sign, or at least knowing, what needs to be done to it. Okay, those are all our subcommittee groups.
Did you need timelines? Did you get timelines for everyone that you needed?
I think so, yeah. So coloring book, we are meeting on Wednesday. Social media, I guess this is a good point just to say, next week is our last full week in May. So, I think we're planning either 1 or 2 in June. I can't remember what we said, but whatever it is, if you want to.
Get them going.
Yeah, get them going. And maybe instead of us meeting again, if you all could coordinate together and then just put them on the Google Doc and let me know, that would be wonderful.
That's great. Yep, we can do that.
HPC training, we've got that timeline. Surveys, I need to do my step. And then Blue Parrot, we kind of know what the next steps there are. So,
Okay,
Great.
So make sure you got your timelines that you needed.
yeah.
All right. And then items from staff. Was that items from staff?
No,
okay,
it's the me show. Sorry, I gotta continue giving you information. Okay, so the only items we have are just that upcoming schedule. So June, I've heard, I think, from 3 of you. So if you could all grab me after this or email me as soon as you can, just to let me know so I can get that on the schedule. We do have 3 items currently scheduled, all historic structure assessments. So we need to find a date for those. And then just a really fun thing. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Boulder Heritage Roundtable, but it's a group that of basically all of the different history-related organizations in Boulder County. And so the Louisville Historic Museum is a little bit more involved than we are. I know them from other parts of my life, and so I've connected a little bit more recently with them. And they sent us their program for tonight, unfortunately. But for tonight, with 2 of our very own Louisvillians being recognized with their Square Nail Awards, which are basically sort of not quite lifetime achievement, but like major achievement over the course of a long period of time of doing preservation work for Boulder County. So Jean Morgan, those of you, I think everybody's met her now at this point because she's come to at least 1 or 2 meetings. She's being recognized for her work on the miners' cabins.
Aww.
And then Bridget Bacon is being recognized for her work on literally everything, yes. I was really
awesome.
bummed not to be able to make it tonight, but it's very exciting and I just wanted you all to know. So,
That's
great
great.
association. And that's all I've got.
All right.
Can I add one thing? I got an email today from the city of Louisville about the plaque ceremony, advertising it. Because I signed up for emails from the city of Louisville. I don't remember when I did that, but I'm glad to get them. But it was nice to see that, that it was advertised.
Yeah, I got that too. So that's good for publicity. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Any other updates from commission members? We'll add that on to there.
Everyone's going to be at the plaque ceremony?
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Hopefully we got the rain out of our system, so. All right. If there's nothing else, we can adjourn for the evening.
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's evening, or tonight's meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much.
Recording stopped.